A reckoning awaits in Madison for the Wolverines. That's next on this week's episode of Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Clark. Waits for it. Hit. Caught.
This is no time for that. In the pocket and a sack. Tim Jamison.
Brady gets terrific. Throws it and a touchdown. Knight again. Schultz just before Brazil got him. And a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle. Caught by Collier at the 5 on his feet. Touchdown, Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris packs a wallop, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Sack. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number, and he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
Win it. We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
Go Blue, I'm Steve Deace. Welcome to this week's episode of Michigan Podcast. Coming up a little bit later on, Brandon Brown and Michael Spath of Wolverine Digest and WTKA-Ann in Arbor will be joining us. This week's Twitter poll results, how confident are you that Michigan can go up to Madison and win? And this week's question of the week, all coming your way. But first, we begin with this. This is going to be a clarifying moment for the 2019 football season. Because Michigan is the better team in terms of talent that's going to be taking the field at Camp Randall on Saturday. And this is a game that if you think you really are a championship program, if you think you really are a championship team, this is the kind of game you win. In fact, Michael Spath has a stat that he reported earlier this week. In the college football playoff era, that's since 2014, teams that make the college football playoff are 33-4 on the road against ranked teams. 33-4. Is that good? Yes. And it's a lot better than Michigan has been. Last year against Michigan State was the first win the Wolverines have had on the road against a ranked opponent since beating number 2 Notre Dame in 2006. Michigan hasn't won a game as an underdog since 2013. That was the Drew Dillio game when they mobilized coming off the bench for that field goal against Northwestern to send it to overtime, and one of the uglier wins Michigan's ever had, although that play was a thing of beauty and stood out. That's the last time Michigan won a game as an underdog. We know all of the trends here. 1-9 against top 10 teams. We know them all. We're the ones, it's funny when the Barrett Sallees and Paul Feinbaums of the world want to quote these things back to us as if, we're not the ones that didn't suffer through every one of these moments. If Michigan doesn't win on Saturday, it's going to be because Wisconsin was tougher, smarter, and executed better. In other words, it was the brand of football we thought we were getting when we hired Jim Harbaugh. And it will be year 5 and the first real test of the season. Now, this defense is playing very well. Some advanced stats have it ranked one of the top 5 defenses in the country. I'm not sure it's that good, but it's going to be pretty good. It's the offense that has been the issue. It's been a comedy of errors, particularly against Army. And let's face it, except for one quarter against Middle Tennessee, this hasn't looked anything. I mean, we're still kind of waiting for that whole speed and space thing to show up. So who are these 2019 Wolverines? Is this finally the team that breaks through? Is this the team we've been waiting 15 years for? And let me say a thing about that too. And I get, every fan base has morons. Every fan base has the guy in the stands who thinks, I can call the plays. Yeah, this one's going to be a run. Next one's going to be a pass. And, they don't know. And 12 personnel, from the inseam of their 48 size jeans. Okay. Every fan base has that. All right. But more and more of you I'm hearing from that are frustrated with the lack of significance. And I want to tell you, I'm here to defend you. There's nothing wrong with that. You have waited 15 years for this program to do something significant. It's won a lot of games, but there's not a lot in the trophy case to show for it. There's a story this morning as we're taping this on Tuesday in the Ann Arbor News that basically says, hey, Michigan, they talk to administrators, boards of regent members, others. Michigan seems fine going 9-3, 8-4 every year if they're making a lot of money and staying out of trouble off the field. Well, I think that's a false choice. I don't buy into every school beats you is cheating and every program that beats you has thugs. Okay, you can win a lot more games against better teams than we have, and not have to change anything other than execution on game day. One of the things that has been a problem in the entire Harbaugh era is, with limited exceptions, an unwillingness to be aggressive offensively when on the road. We're not going to beat Wisconsin in a phone booth on Saturday. That's the style we're actually trying to evolve away from. That's the style they want to play. If we beat them on Saturday, it's going to be because we were aggressive and unleashed our athletic advantage with higher recruited, higher caliber athletes. Which is another reason why, if they don't win on Saturday, all of the old narratives and questions about why is Michigan always overrated will come into play. Why don't they win enough big games? Will they ever make the playoff? Are they ever going to win the Big Ten again? I can think of one way to avoid all of those tropes. Win. You can tell the season is nigh because we're upping the ante where the content is concerned on our Patreon page as well. I've already got some week 0 and week 1 early lines I played earlier this year with an opportunity for you, if you're one of our subscribers, to look at those lines and see how they've adjusted. We've opened up a brand new sports book here in Des Moines, Iowa, where I live, and you've gotten a chance to see the first game that or set of games that I've played at our sports book there as well. We'll be giving you exclusive post-game podcasts, instant reactions to every Michigan game on our Patreon page as well, if you're a part of our $5 a month exclusive club. And that's where you get access to all of our content. And for $25 a month, you get all of that content as well, but you'll get your name or your business in the credits and a shout out on the show. If you want to support us here at Michigan Podcast, go to patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. That's patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. Back here on Michigan Podcast, and let's get this week's Wolverine Digest Roundtable ready to go. Brandon Brown, Michael Spath from Wolverine Digest, WTKA-Ann and Arbor, joining us here on this week's episode of Michigan Podcast. Go blue to both of you. Let's get right to it. Biggest news you guys have heard that gives you reason to believe we're going to see a different or better, hopefully both, offensive performance on Saturday from Michigan compared to what we have seen, except for one quarter against Middle Tennessee so far this season. And Michael, I'll start with you.
Damn it, you had to start with me, huh? Well, I don't know that, honestly, guys, I don't know that I've heard anything in the last week, certainly not from Michigan's side. I would just say that I think when you calm down a little bit, you remove yourself a little bit from the emotional takes that occur in the first 24 hours to 48 hours after a game. You go back and look at it and you say, all right, while Shea Patterson hasn't proven to be this stud quarterback, he also is probably not the guy who really struggled in every facet against Army. If he is, then he shouldn't be the starting quarterback for Michigan. And he's won that job a year ago. He won the job again this year. So I'm just not ready to throw him out with the bathwater yet, as they like to say. And so that's probably the reason for optimism the most. I don't think this Michigan football team is that far off. They've got an emerging running back in Zach Charbonnet. They're hopeful to get John Runyon Jr. back at left tackle this week. They've got the wide receivers, even if Donovan Peoples-Jones is not healthy, and we don't expect him to be for the trip to Madison. So it really just comes down to they need better quarterback play, and I don't think he's going to go out there and have 2 substandard games in a row. Talking to Devin Gardner, who's our Monday morning quarterback, he kind of looked at it, analyzed it, and said, just a little bit of early confidence in that game, and I think you'll see the best that Shea Patterson can be. And so that's why I'm much more optimistic about this one on Saturday.
Brandon, same question to you.
Yeah, I was actually going to go in a similar direction. I don't know if it's anything we heard or if it's anything that was directly given to us during the press conferences yesterday, but just the simple fact of they had a week off and guys aren't able to get healthy. I think the focus is on Shea Patterson. If that oblique injury was really bothering him, like it looked like it was, I'll steal a line from Jim Harbaugh. With absolutely no medical training, I would have to think that he's going to be better with the time off. So I think I think Michael hit it right on the head. I don't think he's as bad as we saw against Army. Maybe he's not the 5-star number 3 player in the country good that a lot of people hoped, I think, when he transferred to Michigan, but he certainly looked better in the first half against Middle Tennessee State than he did the rest of that game and then the entirety of the Army game. So I think Michael's right. I think it's about quarterback play. I think Michigan has enough talent to win against Wisconsin, but playing at Madison, with some guys injured, hopefully they'll be back this week, is going to be tough. But I think the key is Shea Patterson, and if he's healthy, and hopefully he is, hopefully he's okay to run, hopefully he's reading correctly on RPOs and zone reads and things like that, and there are actually reads built into every play. It's like Josh Gaddis said, and it'll bear out that way. We just have to see it. We have to see it to believe it. I mean, because it certainly didn't look like it against Army, and just wasn't there enough against Middle Tennessee. So I'm really anxious to see, one, how healthy he looks and if he's confident in making all those gutsy types of decisions, and then 2, if the playbook looks like it's reflecting his health.
So Paul Chryst and Coach Harbaugh are good friends. Chryst, the Wisconsin coach, said earlier this week that he is confident Michigan hasn't shown much whatsoever of what this new offense is going to look like. I know we all hate the holding back trope, okay? And I don't believe you hold back so that you need a missed field goal on the last play of regulation to beat Army. Maybe you're holding back because you're not confident you can execute as much as you're holding back actual schemes and plays. But Brandon, what's your read into that? About how much of Michigan's offense have we actually seen? And if it's a limited number, how much of it is just because they're not that confident in it yet?
Yeah, I think there's some truth to it because it's early in the season still. I mean, the whole playbook is probably installed, but maybe not. I mean, you've got freshmen that you're trying to get up to speed, especially a couple wide receivers, and obviously Charbonnet. So there's still some things that they're probably working on that they'd like to tighten up and be able to really open up the playbook all the way. But I don't know. I wonder about this a lot. I mean, do they have a special package or a couple of packages that they just feel really, really good about, and they weren't going to use them until Wisconsin, to the point that it almost cost them the game against Army? That just seems crazy to me. Mm-hmm. But maybe it is true. Maybe it is true that they do that. I know it's somewhat legitimate because we see it. I mean, as the year progressed last year, you started to see the playbook change a little bit more. I know I remember might have been the first time Shea Patterson kept the ball on a read option all year, was to pick up a couple big first downs and a couple nice runs against Northwestern. So I do think that there is some truth to it. But again, to think that they have this magical portion of the playbook that's just going to work no matter what, and they weren't willing to use it in a game that they almost lost, seems really disingenuous. I just can't believe that a coach would risk that or do that. But, they're coaches and they make a lot more money doing it than I do, so what do I know?
Same question to you, Michael. Wisconsin, the last team remaining in the FBS to have yet given up a point. How much of this do you think is Paul Chryst trying to, make sure his own defense doesn't come in here overconfident, given how erratic Michigan has looked offensively so far?
Well, Steve, wasn't it Lou Holtz who became famous for essentially blowing every opponent up to be a Goliath on their schedule? Hey, the Citadel we're playing this week, and oh my goodness, in a much more suffering succotash type of way. This is the best team in college football this week. I think a lot of it is coach speak. I think a lot of it is just trying to temper some of the heightened expectations on his own program, remind people that Michigan is no slouch, and that I think what he's trying to say, honestly, is I don't think we've seen them play their best football yet, guys. And whether that means they haven't installed all their offense or they're just not clicking offensively, let's not get too carried away that we've seen the best that is Michigan football. When they come out and they're clicking, they're going to be an entirely different program, entirely different offense than we saw against Middle Tennessee and Army. In terms of whether they're holding anything back, I've had this conversation multiple times. Brandon knows it's a trigger point for me. I talk to former players about it. They all kind of laugh about it. But I'll say this. This is what Devin Gardner tells me is, look, in a scope of a playbook, you might have 100 plays. And you run all 100 plays during training camp, during spring ball. Well, the coaches figure out, look, there's about 20, 25, 30 of these plays that we don't feel comfortable calling because the guys don't execute them in practice. So those 20 to 25 plays get kind of pushed to the side. And you know what they do? In a bye week, they work on those plays. As they go on, they continue to work on those plays because a lot of those are the chess match. It's a counter off of this play that we did earlier in the season that it'll confuse the defense. And so they don't give up on those things. But it's not like they've been holding them back, that they're just unveiling them now. It's that they weren't confident the guys would be able to execute them, and so they didn't put them into the play call. But once the guys get a little better at it, they're a little more confident, okay, this play that in the preseason we didn't feel good about, here's 5 more plays by October that the guys can now execute, so we're going to start calling them. That's what that is.
Let's look at the setup to this game, because it looks eerily similar to last year's meeting between these two teams, but in reverse. Michigan was the team coming in with revenge on its mind. It had the home crowd. It was the healthier team. It was executing better. And Wisconsin ran into a buzzsaw that night. Michigan put up over 300 yards rushing, started playing the jump around. Paul Chryst, for reasons, only Mother Earth knows, was pulling Jonathan Taylor off the field on the most important down, 3rd down. This is, and Wisconsin fans are like, what are we doing out here offensively? Guys, this seems a lot like last year's game in reverse. We're saying the same thing about what are we doing offensively, running a freshman tailback 33 times, targeting Nico Collins twice in a game. What is going on out here? Am I overstating this, Michael? What's your read of that?
I think you're overstating it, honestly, Steve. I don't think it's, I know why you're making the jump, but we're talking about 2 weeks into the season. That was a mid-October game. That was the Badgers coming in with all this preseason hype and already faltering and really struggling and having major quarterback problems. We weren't talking about the 3rd game of the season. So to me, it's not that similar because we're still learning so much about this Michigan offense, this Michigan team, and it's a new offense. Last year wasn't a brand new offense for Wisconsin. They had Alex Hornibrook back. They had Paul Chryst back. They had Jonathan Taylor back for his sophomore season. They had a really good offensive line. They knew what they were supposed to be, and they just weren't performing up to their expectations. I don't think we really know what Michigan's supposed to be yet, and I'm sure that Wisconsin's ticked about last year's game, and they've got Michigan at home, but I think this revenge tour stuff is overblown because Michigan turned it into a T-shirt last year. Look, if you lose to the team the year before, you're motivated to beat that team. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to beat that team. If it was, Ohio State would go 6-6 every year because they punk someone every single year and they come back and they just punk them again. And so, look, it's a 12 o'clock game. It's 11 a.m. start in Wisconsin. It's not a night game. I don't think they're that similar. I think much more likely we're just still learning about what Michigan is. Is it a revenge game for Wisconsin? Sure, and then Michigan's revenge games are against Ohio State every year. I mean, it's a game that they want to win that would help them in the Big Ten standings, put them off in the right spot. I don't draw much parallels between last year and this year. to say this, if you're concerned that Wisconsin's going to beat Michigan because it's a revenge game for them, I think that's hogwash.
All right, so Brandon, you heard Michael break me off over his knee there. Are you going to add to the tough love, or what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think there are a few similarities, but I think Michael hit a lot of points there that make a lot of sense. I mean, you just want to win the games. I don't think it really matters like why or how it happened the year before. The teams are different. There's new guys. There's new staff. Different location, different time of the year, as Michael pointed out. So, I mean, you could probably point to a couple similarities in every matchup every year. I mean, because the teams aren't completely new and completely different, but there's also enough differences that make it a completely new contest, and that's why they change year in and year out. I mean, I don't think. Look, Michigan won by 25 last year. I think. I don't think either of those teams are going to go into this one saying we're going to win or lose by 25 points. I mean, it's too different. It feels too different. Michigan is still getting going. They're still trying to figure out what they're good at, still trying to get healthy, and might be healthier this week than they've been in the previous 2 weeks, which I think was kind of the opposite for Wisconsin last year. They continued to get more banged up as time went on. So, yeah, there's a couple things you could point to that are like, oh, this is kind of like last year, but in reverse. But, yeah, I think Michael did a pretty good job of spanking you there, Steve. I don't know. I don't have much else left to say.
So last week, Josh Gaddis came out, spoke to the media, and one of the things that Michigan's new offensive coordinator, one of the things he said that I thought was really interesting is, I've really liked this self-awareness I've seen from the program this offseason. Even Harbaugh after the Middle Tennessee game saying, yeah, we noticed how good the teams we still have to play look this week. We got to play better than this. I like the self-awareness. And Gaddis coming out and saying, our guys are really aware of the expectations on them. And they just need to relax, chill out, and just go out there and play football, basically, is what he said. This game has all of those pressure points. The lack of game wins as an underdog, the lack of road wins of significance. I mean, all of the things that, the people pounding the narrative on Michigan, it's like a harmonic convergence. Everything other than the team is called Ohio State comes into play here, and it's in a stadium where Michigan hasn't won since this year's incoming freshman class was born. How aware do you think they are of that pressure, given what Gaddis said last week, especially given the way they executed against Army and for 2 weeks? To hear about it, that can do a couple of things to a team, Brandon. On one hand, it can really add to the pressure you're feeling. On the other hand, it can bring you to the point where you're sitting there saying, you know what, screw this, man. I'm tired of hearing this. It just needs to end, and we're the ones that have to end it. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I know at least a couple of the coaches are aware of it for a fact. So, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things pointing at this game. We talked about this on the radio today about the narrative, exactly what the narrative is, how it can either really kind of be confirmed that, Jim Harbaugh hasn't won a lot of big games hasn't won any big games really on the road, hasn't won many big games against ranked opponents, hasn't beat his chief rivals. Now, Wisconsin doesn't really fall under that umbrella, but it's still a very big game early on in the Big Ten season. So I think this game is going to go a really long way for either putting the brakes on that narrative a little bit or really ramping it up. I mean, it feels much more damaging than it does repairing to me. If Michigan loses this game, that volume is going to go to 12. And if they win, I think it's just going to be like, okay, good. That's what Michigan should
now
do.
Now prove it against Ohio State, right?
To do.
Yeah. Yeah, if they win, they're just going to say prove it against Ohio State. That's what they're going to say, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Michael, what do you think?
I'm curious about this, and I think this game's going to go a long way towards answering questions. Here's what we don't know is which players on this team can do exactly what Gaddis said. Relax, chill out, just have ice in their veins, to use an old sports cliche, right? Because I'll tell you this, from my own playing career, never made it to college, certainly, but when the games got tenser, when the games got bigger, when we played our rival, I mean, I was nervous. I was anxious. This is why I never played college athletics. This is why no one recruited me, because I wasn't great in the clutch when it came to performing in the key moments. And so, we like to think that every Division I college athlete, certainly every pro athlete, This is what they've trained for. This is what they're good at. But some guys are just not. And those guys get weeded out as the level gets, more and more intense. And so what we know is a week ago, someone like Aiden Hutchinson, someone like Josh Metellus, someone like Josh Uche and Kwity Paye, with their backs up against the wall, they were able to make key plays at key moments and win the game for Michigan. So for me, when I look at them, go, you know what? I feel pretty good about Aiden Hutchinson. I feel pretty good about most of those guys in the front seven that they didn't tense up when the going got tough, and they made some big plays for Michigan. The flip side is, what plays did Shea Patterson make in overtime and double overtime? He really didn't make any. He overthrew Nico Collins open in the end zone. He missed a couple of other guys. So we're still trying to figure out, Shea Patterson, the guy who throws a 75-yard touchdown pass to Michigan against Michigan State to Donovan Peoples-Jones, clutch. Guy's got ice in his veins. Comes out, looks like junk against Notre Dame last year. Comes out in the Ohio State game and clearly wasn't the best quarterback on the field. Comes out in this Army game and really struggled. So does he have ice in his veins? Is he capable of doing that or not? I'm not really sure. Not really sure about Zach Charbonnet yet. He looks pretty good. He's made a lot of big blocks in his career already. But has he got ice in his veins? I'm not really sure. Nico Collins, I feel pretty good about it. He made some nice plays against Michigan State a year ago. He seemingly is that guy. Tariq Black, 2 drops a week ago against Army. So I think we're figuring out a lot of these guys are being thrust in these positions for the first time. And in the case of Shea Patterson, it's his 16th start at Michigan. And I still don't know if he is an ice in the veins or if he is, hey, the pressure's here and he's just going to start panicking. Last week 2 weeks ago against Army, he didn't look very good. I'm hoping that was an aberration and that he is one of those Gaddis guys that can just calm it down and play his best football. We're going to find out on Saturday.
Michael, how good is Wisconsin really? Do we know that yet?
They're 110-0 better than the 2 opponents they've played. And the 2 opponents they've played were terrible a year ago, and South Florida's going to be terrible this year. No, I don't think we really know. I mean, did we really know how good Maryland was until they got challenged by Temple? Did we really know how good Penn State was until they got challenged by Pittsburgh? Did we really know how good Michigan State was until they got challenged by Arizona State? It's been really, really easy for Wisconsin so far against South Florida and Central Michigan. I'd like to know what type of team they are when it gets a little bit hard for them. And I don't know the answer to that question. Maybe it'll turn out to be this is a great Wisconsin team because championship teams, when the going gets tough, they get stronger. And we don't know that about Wisconsin yet. We know a little bit about Michigan that when the going got tough, at least the defense made some plays. The offense did enough to put themselves in position to kick a game-winning field goal. But yeah, we're still learning. We're still learning an awful lot about both teams right now.
In fact, against those anemic opponents, Brandon, Wisconsin has put together, I believe it is the second largest scoring differential in its first 2 games of the season ever by a Big Ten team in the AP poll era, which goes back to 1936. But these are bad teams. Until last week, South Florida was mired in an 8-game losing streak, and they lost 7 of those games by at least 24 points. Central Michigan was 1-11, 2-10 the year before, and what was kind of a down year for the MAC. So yeah, those weren't good opponents. But if 110 to nothing against 2 opponents was easy, we'd see more Big Ten teams doing it since 1936. So how good is Wisconsin?
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about all of that. I mean, I've said this on the radio a few times already. It's hard to pitch a shutout against anybody. There's just the way the college offenses work nowadays, and especially when good teams get up by a lot and they bring in the backups. Almost always the other team can scrape out some points. So to pitch 2 shutouts is pretty impressive. I don't care who it's against. On the flip side, yeah, they were bad teams. I mean, Central Michigan, one of the worst in the MAC. South Florida, that stat you just threw out there, I hadn't heard that before. Those are big deficits. To lose 7 games by more than 24 points is bad. And that means that's against a lot of conference opponents for them, too, so that's really bad. So, yeah, I don't think that Wisconsin is a world beater by any means, or if they are, we don't know because of who they played. I know one thing, Jonathan Taylor's really good. That's one thing I do know about Wisconsin. I don't know much about Jack Cohn. I don't know much about the new offensive linemen that they have, and I don't know a lot about what their defense is going to look like against athletes like what Michigan can put out on the field. But Jonathan Taylor's really good. He's been really good for 2 years. He's going to continue to be good this year. He's the key to their whole team, and if you can corral him and keep him in check, like Jim Harbaugh has said, you're not going to stop him but you can contain him. Look, if they can keep him to 100 yards and no touchdowns like they did last year, I think that puts Michigan in a really good spot to win the game, and that's what they should go in trying to do. And I think that's why Don Brown was so excited to play Wisconsin, because it's more normal. It's more what they're used to. It's something they're more familiar with, as opposed to the weird personnel that Middle Tennessee ran, and of course the very strange offense that Army employs.
Let's close this out with each of us giving a key to victory for Michigan. Taking the turnover issue, when you're you've already had more lost fumbles than you had all of last year. That's an obvious one. So let's take that one off the table. Let's each come up with something else that's a key to victory for Michigan. And I'll tell you what mine is. Mine is being aggressive with your offensive play calling on the road. This has been a problem the entire Harbaugh era, with the one exception when they had to really go to the well on the road in that key game against Indiana, his very first year. But you go to 2016 against Iowa on the road, even before Wilton Speight got hurt, they were way too conservative and let Iowa hang around in that game. I don't fault them for Ohio State that year because Wilton was hurt. 2017, I guess I'd kind of give him a pass there because of the quarterback situation. But I go into the offensive approach we had against Michigan State, where we let them hang around because we waited way too late in the game to actually start attacking them down the field. And then once we did, the dam burst. I think this has been an issue for Michigan. Lloyd Carr had this issue for many years as well. So this is not new to this era, but I think aggressive, if you're going to, particularly with the offense we're trying to evolve to, if this is why we did this, to me, I think we can't beat Wisconsin in a phone booth. I think we're going to have to beat them by out-athleting them. So my key to victory is to being aggressive offensively in your approach to the game on the road. It's mid-September. The weather will be fine. Fast track on field turf, early game. You've got the speed advantage. Take advantage of it. Michael, what's yours?
Gosh, I mean, I'm not really sure. Honestly, I'm still kind of going through, looking at both of these teams and figuring it out. I mean, I know the obvious is, hey, shut down Jonathan Taylor, but I don't know if that's the case because Jack Cohn is playing so well. I'll tell you what I'm looking for early in the game. And you're talking about the aggressiveness and going downfield. I'm just looking for Shea Patterson to demonstrate to me in the first quarter that he's making the right reads on read option. He's not afraid to run the football, and he connects with his wide receiver on some explosive plays. Each of the first two games, he's missed open guys in the end zone. Now, you can say that Ronnie Bell didn't adjust well to some of the passes, or you could say his quarterback needs to put it in a better spot. And so I just want to see some precision, some accuracy, and some killer instinct from Shea Patterson in the first quarter. And if I see that, then I'm going to believe that Michigan's going to get the better quarterback play in this game. And you know what Jonathan Taylor is. And honestly, I don't think Jonathan Taylor will go off for 200 yards. I don't think Jonathan Taylor versus Zach Charbonnet will be a difference of 100 yards rushing. I think both these teams are going to run the football effectively in this one. It's going to come down to who has the better quarterback. And we were looking at this on our radio show. How many times in the big games has Shea Patterson been a better quarterback? He wasn't against Brandon Wilbush, Notre Dame. They lost. He wasn't against Dwayne Haskins last year against Ohio State. He lost. He wasn't against Felipe Franks in Florida. He lost. He was against Brian Lewerke. He was against Trace McSorley. He was against Alex Hornibrook from Wisconsin, and they won the game. So in the biggest games, you need your quarterback. It's as simple as one position. You need your quarterback to be better than their quarterback. He's in 3-3 in 6 games in that respect. So it's time for him to go out there and be the better quarterback. If he does that, Michigan wins this game.
Brandon, same question to you, and you get the last word.
Yeah, I'm actually going to throw out 5 quick ones if that's okay, because I wrote an article about this very thing, about what they need to get better at during this bye week and what they need to shore up. And we've already hit on a couple of them. One of them is ball security, so we don't need to spend a lot of time there. One of them is what you said, Steve, an offensive approach. Like, define an offensive approach. If that's going down the field, if that's getting guys in space, if that's working the screen game, using the speed and athletes that you have, then do it and stick to it and win the game playing in that fashion. Fast, up-tempo, speed, whatever it is, do it, because it hasn't looked like they knew what that was going to be yet. And then the other two were get healthy, and that's kind of out of their control, but I think the bye came at a good time for that. You hope you see John Runyon Jr. back in there at left tackle. It doesn't sound like we'll see Donovan Peoples-Jones, but we'll see, Shea with the oblique injury. Christian Turner was dinged up. True Wilson was dinged up. So hopefully all those guys that had Josh Ross missed the second half of the game against Army with the stinger. Hopefully all of those guys that kind of had a small nagging injury will be back with a week off. And then the last one is to get back to the basics on defense, and I've already touched on this as well. Don Brown he was hooting and hollering at his little press conference, like super excited to play Wisconsin, which seems weird because you just barely beat Army, but he's excited to get back to normal, like what they do on defense, a four-man front, being able to actually rush the passer and put some pressure on people with blitz packages and letting your corners go out there and make plays man-to-man. They didn't really get to do any of that against Army because of the offense that they run. So those are 5 things I think they certainly looked at over the bye week and will help them going into this game on Saturday. And if they can be better in all of those areas than they were against Army, then it should be a game. And then, everything that we've said and everything that Michael just said keeps coming back to Shea Patterson. What kind of game is he going to have, and how are the rest of those things going to play out is going to be the determining factor.
Yeah, I don't even want to contemplate what next week is like if Jack Cohn goes out there and outplays Shea Patterson. So let's not contemplate it and just win the game so we don't have to worry about things like that. Michael Spath, Brandon Brown, thanks both of you for joining us again here. Great stuff on Michigan Podcast. Talk to you next week.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
Well, as you just heard, we're very excited about the addition of Brandon Brown to our website at WolverineDigest.com. He has been a fixture covering Michigan football, particularly recruiting, but team-based stuff as well for the last several years for the Wolverine. And now he will be doing the same for us here at WolverineDigest.com, beginning with focusing on covering both Michigan football and men's basketball. Then he'll be branching out from there. And we've already upped the content ante quite a bit, but it's about to get a massive turbo injection here from the likes of Brandon Brown. So we're very excited that Brandon is joining us here at Wolverine Digest. That's a great place for you to keep up with everything we do all week long in between episodes here at Michigan Podcast. Just go to WolverineDigest.com. This week's Twitter poll results, we asked you, do you think Michigan's going to beat Wisconsin? And a majority of you are not confident. 53% of you say no, 47% say yes. I actually thought, my vote would be no. I think Wisconsin's going to win on Saturday. Although I'd love to be wrong. I actually thought this might not be as close as it turned out to be. I thought it might be a little bit more lopsided. Here's hoping those of you still holding on to hope. Keep hope alive. Here's hoping those of you doing that have your hope rewarded on Saturday in Madison, where the Wolverines have not won since 2001. The year that a lot of this year's freshman recruits that are incoming were born. So, yeah. This week's question of the week. Lindsay writes, we need to get our house in order. If Wisconsin beats Michigan and Boise beats Air Force next weekend, then Boise overtakes Michigan as the all-time winningest program in terms of win percentage. Now, that's not a question, it's a statement, but it's one that I think needs some attention. We take a lot of pride around here in our traditional accomplishments. And the reason being is we don't have a lot of contemporary ones, right? So we love talking about tradition. Well, this is one of our tentpole traditional accomplishments here. And my, oh my, because I don't know how you are, but when we lose a game like this on Saturday, it makes me, I can't even listen to any of the college football shows, podcasts, media. The ones nationally that I really like and enjoy because I know what they're going to say and it's true, but I've heard it all before so many times. I just can't handle listening to it again. Are you like that? And can you imagine the talking point of, Harbaugh, all he can do is finish third in the division and cost Michigan one of its key records, one of its key benchmarks. They're no longer number one in winning percentage. I'm just sick of it. I'm just sick of it. I know a lot of you are as well. Win. Just win. It's time to win. We've had plenty of time to recruit. It's time to win. Want to thank all of you for tuning in here this week again on Michigan Podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Michigan Podcast. Keep up to date with what we're writing, me, Brandon, Michael, every single day at WolverineDigest.com. There's a ton of content there each and every single day. Hey, wherever you're watching or listening to us, if you could leave us a 5-star review, a like, a subscribe, whatever is appropriate on your platform that you're accessing us through, the more of those we get, we would be greatly beneficial. Please keep those coming. Share what we're doing here with other Michigan fans that you know, if you like what we're doing here as well. And a special thanks to Detroit Sports Podcast. They help to spread the word about what we do here each week, too. We are back at it again next week, hopefully, although I'm not optimistic. Hopefully, it's after a rare but much needed huge road win for the Wolverines. Until then, go blue.